Okay, so we're calling to this committee meeting to order at 8:16. Madam Secretary, if you could take the roll in the meantime, I will be pulling up the agenda.
All right. Arrowwood, I'm here. Bracco,
Present.
Sizelski,
Here.
Harlos, here.
Here.
Latham,
Still here.
okay. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Robertson, Dave Robertson,
Here, ma'am.
all right. Tom Roulette,
Here.
okay. Dr. Chuck Moulton,
Here.
Mike Seebeck,
This is a recording.
okay, you're here. Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was wondering if we want to put the results of the vote on proposal N into the minutes.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. So what's our attendance?
Oh, right now we have 10. We have a full complement.
Okay, and did we start an email ballot to approve the 4-6 minutes, or do we need to do that? I forgot.
I think we approved them with a one typo correction.
We didn't do a ballot, though, I think.
Oh, right.
Okay, so you did that. Let's just take care of that now so we don't have to do an email ballot on it. After that one correction, which Ms. Arrowwood did make, is there any objection to the April 6th minutes? Okay, hearing none. We did pass proposal N over email, which I'm going to pull up so that we can get this into the minutes. Just one moment. Okay, it was on the, it's as shown on the screen. This has already been passed, so there's no debate. It's just to get it into the minutes. And for anyone who's here to see, it is to strike number 5 in Article 11 and replace it instead of, so it did say ranked alternates may be named by the appointing bodies to fill any vacancies or absences in the convention committees. That's referring to the Credentials Committee, the Platform Committee, and the Bylaws and Rules Committee. And we've changed that to each appointing body may appoint ranked alternates up to the number of its primary appointments. The problem that this solves is that you don't have a state which maybe has one appointment and in theory can appoint 1,000 alternates if they wish. So for instance, Colorado always appoints a ton of alternates because we've realized that that's how Colorado gets a bigger voice, and why not take advantage of that? For instance, our platform committee appointments, I think we got 1 primary and 3 alternates, if I remember correctly. In the future, we'll be limited to 1 alternate because if one of those drops off, the state could always appoint another one. So that was N, but I don't blame Colorado for taking advantage of the system as it was, but now we're disincentivizing that. Well, we're actually prohibiting it more than disincentivizing it. Okay, I doubt we're going to get to a vote on this. So we're going to at least start with discussion, which is good. And we've got 25 minutes. So the short title is Add Notice Requirements. I'm going to pull this up on the screen. I'm pulling up my original proposal O. I honestly haven't had a chance to look at yours, Paul. I might suggest we do it as amendments to mine if we get to that point, but let's at least look at it. And I can start with my primary advocacy for it and we can start on debate. I see Mr. Roulette has his hand raised. Are you looking to get into line for this proposal after my advocacy, or do you have something else to go over?
I'd like to get into line, please.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so this, and then I have Mr. Bracco after Mr. Roulette, so you can, let me just write that because Wayne brought me, he's the best husband ever and brought me a glass of wine. Okay. It's been a while since I've actually read this, to be honest with you, because we had a flurry of proposals, and now we've kind of slowed down. We're catching up. This was, though, to add notice requirements with rules for member submitted proposals. Right now, members can move things from the floor. It's difficult. They need to suspend the rules. But it's not really the difficulty alone that bothers me. It's the ambush factor. And I'm particularly sensitive to this because Colorado has excellent notice requirements. Everyone comes into our convention knowing exactly what they are going to hear, and they have the opportunity to become well informed upon it and have appropriate amendments already in place. When you have things that just get proposed from the floor, sometimes everyone's on a convention high. And like we saw on this committee where I convinced you guys to suspend the rules and adopt something that if Dr. Moulton had the opportunity, I wouldn't have done. That was a good example. Things like that happen on the convention floor. You want reflection time, and you want people to be able to give input to the delegates that are being sent to the convention on their behalf on how they should vote. In Colorado, again, as you can tell, I'm very proud of Colorado. We have a requirement in our bylaws that our delegates are actually delegates, that they are expected to represent Colorado, and that they're expected to give account for their votes and submit a written report on how they voted on everything to the extent that they can remember if it wasn't a written ballot. Because we also don't have secret ballots. So everyone knows how everyone voted on things, even including delegates. Like you'll see in our convention minutes, you want to know who got elected to what, you know who voted for it. So there's a lot of accountability in Colorado. But in order to have accountability, they have to be able to get feedback from the people they're representing. The word delegate literally means you're representing other people. I think, unfortunately, too many people treat that as I don't think committee should be, as, hey, I get to go do what I want, rather than representing the state that you had the honor to be sent from. So I didn't want to completely eliminate member proposals, but I did want to eliminate floor ambush and have well thought out proposals that actually are going to have a better chance of being heard rather than having to suspend the rules because it's granting a pathway for them to be heard. So that was a lot more than this one line rationale. I guess I have to flesh out that rationale a little bit. So the proposed amendment is to Article 11. And and 17. I'm going to read these out loud. It's to add new sections C and D. So this is for other committees. Section C, the Platform Committee and the Bylaws and Rules Committee must provide reports of their recommendations along with minority reports to the party secretary at least 35 days prior to the regular convention, which shall then be published on the party website within 5 days of receipt, which this does in conjunction with having the committees appointed earlier, is it gives notice. Right now, there's no requirement that the Platform or the Bylaws Committee publish their report before the convention. They generally have. But I can tell you, sometimes it's been really 12th hour, and it doesn't give this opportunity for discussion and reflection. So this would impose notice requirements also upon the Platform and Bylaws report. And what this also does, though, is it starts limiting amendments to scope of notice. So, for instance, with that bylaws proposal that we had to raise dues from $25 to $50, if we had this notice requirement in place, nobody could strike 50 and insert 0, or strike 50 and insert 75. The scope of notice would limit it to between 25 and 50. D, and I'll put you in line third, Dr. Moulton, I have you down, is any party sustaining member may submit to the party secretary proposals to amend either the platform or these bylaws, provided they are signed by 25 sustaining members and provided to the party secretary no later than 60 days prior to the regular convention. These proposals shall be forwarded to the respective committee chairs and published on the party website within 5 days of receipt. The committee may include recommendations on these proposals in their reports. So the committee can actually adopt them because there's enough time between that and their report, or they have time to say why they think it's a good idea or a bad idea. Article 17, amendment. So I'm just going to say how it will read if amended. The party platform and these bylaws may be amended by the delegates at any regular convention as follows. A, with a 2/3 vote, provided they were included in the published report or minority reports of the platform committee or the bylaws and rules committee, or in timely valid submissions from party membership. B, by a 3/4 vote from the floor without prior notice. That allows still things from the floor in case something comes up, like COVID, where we were trying to allow for electronic participation at the last minute. C, I left in any platform plank may be deleted by a majority vote because this is not presuming the other one came before and passed. I'm not trying to bundle in the deletion thing with this one. If we decide to present the other report first, C will be taken out, and it passes, C will be taken out. If we present the other one first and it fails, C will be left in. And then there were some changes to first the order of business, which we'll put on the agenda. After each respective committee report, members submitted amendment proposals with notice. And it goes to a new Rule 6, probably be Rule 5 if we end up deleting Rule 4, saying how debating and voting would go with the members submitted. I'm going to read this aloud. Member submitted proposals shall be heard, beginning with the proposal with the greatest number of sustaining member signatures and continuing in descending order. Sustaining members may sign on to member proposals after they have been submitted, provided that no signatures shall be accepted after the convention has been called to order. The member who submitted the proposal or their designee may take up to 2 minutes to state and explain the proposal. The convention chair shall then open the proposal to debate without amendment for a period of up to 10 minutes before bringing the matter to a vote. A, if the recommendation fails, the convention chair shall inquire if any amendments are proposed from the floor. B, if there are such proposals, the convention chair shall request a vote on whether to consider amendments, and with majority approval may consider amendments for a period of up to 10 minutes. Rule 7, any delegate who wishes to make a floor proposal may take up to 2 minutes to state and explain the proposal to the committee. I am actually not moving Rule 7. I am deleting that from my proposal because there was something that we discussed. I'm not moving that. I am deleting that from. So that is the motion on the floor. Okay, Mr. Roulette, then Mr. Bracco, then Dr. Moulton. Mr. Roulette.
I generally like this. The only thing that I don't like about it is the anti-ambush segment of it that says that you need 3/4 of people to make a change to the platform or bylaws if they don't give proper notice. And my reasoning is just that 3/4 of those on the floor, that is extraordinarily difficult. Like that is quite difficult, more difficult than I think maybe people realize. And also, I feel like, just in my gut, it seems like if you can suspend the rules and do something with a 2/3 vote, that should be just basically the default thing to do, the default amount to do something difficult. If you set it at 3/4, I feel like it will simply never happen. And maybe that's our intention here, but I don't like it in my guts. It just seems like too much.
Thank you, Mr. Roulette. Just one point of clarification. It's not a 3/4 of delegates. Just to be clear, it's a 3/4 vote, which is a 3/4 of those present and voting, just like a 2/3 vote is 2/3 of those present and voting, not 2/3 of delegates. Okay, just wanted to be clear. Mr. Bracco?
So I think I have the other version of this, and I do want to move that as an amendment. It's actually a lot less changes than I had thought. I thought that your initial proposal did not have all of the changes to the rules, but it does, and I think my amendment version is word for word the same. So I don't think there's any changes in that section with the rules, including taking out Rule 7.
Yeah.
There were. I think you have it in the agenda. There's actually one more thing that I'd like to do in addition to that, and I have to give credit to Mr. Latham on bringing it to my attention.
Can I ask one favor, Mr. Bracco? Can we hear
Sure.
from Dr. Moulton, and then I was in line, and then I'll come back to you for amendment, unless Dr.
Okay.
Moulton is intending upon amending. If he is, I'm going to give preference to Mr. Bracco.
I was not intending on amending.
Okay, then please give you debate preference before we start screwing with it.
Okay. Well, very briefly, I like a lot of what is in this proposal. I like that it codifies the procedures, and I like in general the procedures it codifies. I don't like that it adds a bunch of words, but I guess it's hard to avoid adding words if we're adding new procedures. So to the extent we can condense those words, if possible. I don't have any specific ideas, but I would be in favor of condensing words. I don't have a problem with the 3/4 requirement for floor votes. I agree that that threshold should be higher. That without notice should have a higher threshold than with notice. So that's not a problem to me. The one thing that I'm struggling with about this is convention time. So here we are. I believe amending the agenda to add a place that we can hear from member proposals and to the platform and the bylaws. And are we going to allocate a certain amount of minutes to that? If we are, then that's going to be minutes that are going to be taken away from elsewhere in the convention. If we aren't, then people will complain that this is kind of just dead letter, that we are proposing a procedure and then not giving them really a chance to implement it. So yeah, I really worry. The time on the agenda is what worries me the most. If there's a set amount of time, then if it's too much time, then it eats a lot away from other places in the agenda. And it could even be advantageous for a proposal to come through the membership rather than through the bylaws committee, because the bylaws committee may eat through its whole time and not get through some of its proposals lower in its report and say, I'm on the bylaws committee, I could just submit a member proposal and that could be heard easier, which is a problem. So on the other hand, if there's too little time, then it's not really accomplishing anything. So I think we need to think very carefully about how much time would be allocated to member proposals, and maybe there would need to be some sort of vote on how much time to allocate from the floor or something like that. And I guess the larger issue is the agenda period. Obviously, delegates can alter the agenda however they want, and that happened at the last convention, which I think was a travesty, because the bylaws committee put a lot of work in, and we didn't get to the bylaws committee report, even though it was very early in the proposed agenda. And the bylaws committee considered very carefully in the past how to schedule the agenda, so that the ordering of the agenda was very carefully done so that enough people would be there for less popular things. And when the agenda was reordered by a group of delegates, that frustrated that intention. So yeah, those are my main concerns: is the timing issues and the agenda. But I do like the substance of the proposal.
Okay, thank you. I had myself in line, then Mr. Bracco, then Mr. Molman. I wanted to answer Mr. Roulette, though I'm mostly going to be agreeing with Dr. Moulton. The difference is notice. Things without notice should be disfavored and disincentivized, since any member, whether or not they're a delegate, as long as they're a sustaining member, can submit proposals. We want to incentivize notice, not waiting till the last minute. So it should be a higher vote threshold. We already do that for some things that are higher vote thresholds than merely suspending the rules, such as amending the statement of principles, such as accepting delegates that weren't submitted to the credentials committee. So you definitely want to disincentivize certain things that might be considered an ambush. So just personally, I actually wouldn't favor any of this proposal without that 3/4 for floor ones, because that's kind of the whole point. When you said that might be the point, yeah, the point is to disincentivize things from the floor, which are generally 90% of the time a horrible idea. And I do want to disincentivize horrible ideas. To answer Dr. Moulton, the convention committee allocates time, and they can do that based upon how many. Like, I got asked already from the convention committee, how much time do you think the bylaws and rules committee needs this convention? And I told them as much as you'll give us. But also, just an FYI, this convention in DC is going to be 4 days. I think that's going to become standard. I think we've start to realize, or at least 3.5, at minimum 3.5, maximum 4. It's going to go to Monday. So it's going to be Friday to Monday. So I think that will help take care of it. And maybe doing it 3.5 this time will start to gear people towards that. But the Convention Oversight Committee can see how many bylaws submitted, members submitted proposals or are, and gear the time towards that. Delegates can always change the agenda. You know, that's kind of the right that they have if they have the votes, whether it's a good idea or not. If we wanted to screw with that, we could. I don't think we could even put in the bylaws, though, that it requires a certain vote threshold, because I think that's a bylaw in the nature of a rule of order that can be suspended by 2/3. I don't think there's anything you can do about that. That is something that the delegates quite simply have the right to do, whether we like it or not. I'd have to talk to a parliamentarian about that. I'm thinking through my head if we wanted to try to avoid that happening in the future. Mr. Bracco, you had an amendment.
Yes, I think you have it in the agenda, but there's one addition that I'd like to make to it.
Okay, let me pull this up. And you're probably going to be discussing this more on the list because we will be coming up on time. And I have a feeling we'll probably be spending nearly the whole next meeting on this. Maybe not. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. Where is it at in yours? I have.
It is at the very beginning. So in addition to before Article 11. So this is actually going to be from Article 3, specifically Article 3.3. Apologies. I know that's not currently in the proposal. I'd like to add it.
Where is that on here, though?
It's not currently part of it. It's from the bylaws. Bylaws, Article 3, Section 3.
Yeah, I need that in writing.
Oh, sure. Just a moment then.
Madam Chair, while he's doing that.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Mullman.
Yeah, because I just want to speak generally. I agree with everything that's been said by yourself, Madam Chair, and also Dr. Moulton. Preventing floor-crafted language from ending up in the bylaws is a very good thing. Some of the absolute worst things I've seen in state parties especially, but even at national, are the things that get crafted on the floor because they are not being considered against the entire body of the bylaws. Somebody sees a problem with the bylaw, like, I'll fix that. And they jump in and they make a motion, and they don't realize that the thing that they just fixed there broke 6 other things. And last-minute amendments are bad. That's why I absolutely support prior notice for the committees for any members submitted, as long as it's very clear that this is the deadline. And honestly, I would even go so far as to say that, maybe there needs to be a deadline for proposed amendments, not necessarily way out, but some days before the convention, just so that we're not ending up with floor language in the bylaws. Because I will tell you that is, again, just really want to emphasize all these years I've seen, and it's not just my state, but others.
Yep.
That floor language is what ends up screwing everything up. And then you're stuck with the damn thing for a year or two.
Yeah,
So,
that's part of the problem in Michigan right now. I mean, it didn't what initially caused the problem, but it was a subsequent problem where on the floor, I believe they wanted special conventions to be held within 45 days. Yet later in their bylaws, it says all conventions require 60 days notice. How do you give 60 days
Right.
notice of a convention that's to be held within 45 days?
And that's the problem, is that when you move stuff from the floor, bad things happen. We should try to avoid that unless it's absolutely necessary. And those higher thresholds should absolutely apply to any floor language, any floor proposal, to avoid that, because you are creating a massive burden on the delegates too, because they have to sit there and think about, well, boy, let me think about all the bylaws, because I'm a bylaws dork and I've read all the bylaws and have them memorized. Let me think about the ramifications of all it. Nobody's really going to do that, and you're creating this huge burden on people who normal members know a bylaws geek, right? And they ask the bylaws geek their opinion and what does this mean? What does this do? And they get informed information from people that pay closer attention, parliamentarians, people that are actually experienced with bylaws. They gather that information before a floor amendment. I mean, you're looking around like, well, what does Aaron Starr think about this? What does Karen Harlow think about that? You're like looking around the hall, trying to look at facial expressions across the hall to make a judgment call on whether or not you should vote for something. And that's just a terrible place to put delegates. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Mr. Bracco.
So I had put the language of it in the chat.
Isn't that the same as the proposal before about?
So if we could, if you could add that, I think you'll quickly see. I want to.
There isn't
Mr.
strike through and mark out there though.
So if you could just paste that in there to begin with, I'll let you know what gets struck. Basically, to summarize, in our new version of Article 17, we
Yes.
are putting thresholds for amending the platform in there as well. So the last two sentences of Article 3, Section 3 are now redundant, and I'd like to strike them.
Okay, a lot of that is going to be dependent though upon the other proposal we had. So I would.
Yes, but it's still redundant within this proposal. If we're putting it in Article 17, it shouldn't also be in Article 3.
Can I suggest something, Mr. Bracco? Because you're combining two proposals now that the committee hasn't decided to. Because you're changing the threshold to 2/3 where we already voted for that in a different proposal. And
no, ma'am, I am not. We currently do have in the amended Article 17, Section C, I believe, of this existing proposal, as it is currently worded, that says any platform plank may be deleted by majority vote. And it would
Right,
just be
okay.
the same, like, I think the same procedure of like, where do we strike, what actually is included in the final proposal. But like,
okay, it's what you're suggesting, because then what you posted is what the bylaws already say. You're not proposing an amendment.
No, I can't do strike through in the chat.
Yeah, but people, this is kind of ambushy because they haven't seen this language before. Like,
Well,
and we're
I
coming
understand
up
what
on
you're saying. It
8:45.
makes sense to me.
Can we
If you-
do this next meeting? Because
Oh, okay.
we're at 8:45, and I would like that you put the strike through and put the language maybe in an email, because I'm lost and we're going to go another 10, 15 minutes explaining this, and it's not going to get voted on because we are at time unless somebody's moving to extend time. And Miss Arrowwood had her hand up, and I didn't know if it was procedural or debate.
Procedural.
Yes,
Was the speaker before Mr. Bracco, Mr. Molman?
yes, he came back.
Oh, we came back. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, so where we're at, unless there's a motion to extend time, is Mr. Bracco has a pending amendment. He will be called upon first at the next meeting but he's going to give the language of this amendment with the strike through and all of that in an email so I can have it for the meeting. And if he wants to give any argument for it, he can do that as well in email to prepare people. But Mr. Bracco will be on deck first for that amendment. Did you have further amendments as well?
The ones that were marked up in the copy that you had. It's
all right, so
that plus this one more thing.
Okay, so we will hear from Mr. Bracco first on this. We got at least some initial discussion going. I would encourage Dr. Moulton to look at the language to see if it can be simplified to less words. You know, covering the same ground in less words is always good. I know Mr. Bracco and I had tried to do that, but I don't think he and I are the most concise people on the planet either. So if other people can look and see if maybe we can tighten it up, I'm sure that would be great as well. And let's just take a look ahead at the agenda before we adjourn. After this one will be the electronic voting. Next, then make the preamble explicitly part of the platform, and then RCV. And we're caught up. I would suggest people maybe go look at the brainstorming thread to see if there's anything on there that we want to bring forward. Again, there's nothing saying we can't be done super early in this term, but I have a feeling there are other things people would like to address. So we are getting really caught up. We had like 20 something things on the agenda before, and we're now up to 7. We'll probably get through a couple next meeting. So if you want to start doing proposals again, I don't think it will overwhelm everybody. So our next meeting, when is the deadline for new submissions? Mr. Madden says, we don't have one because there's no notice requirements in our bylaws. We, in theory, can add to our report the day we could add to it 5 minutes before I walk up on stage. In theory, I want to pull up this timeline for a second here because this will help answer that question. This is our plans. Report submitted April 24th. I didn't mean end of April 24th. April 24th is the committee's goal. But that is not, Mr. Madden, that's what we were just discussing about that. That's the amendment we were literally just discussing. So yeah, the committee's goal is April 24th to have the report submitted. However, we want to send a member survey by the end of January.
2024, not 2023, 2024.
Yes. End of April. You're correct. End of April, 2024. Not April 24th. Got it. Thank you. And by the end of January, we want to have a survey. So I actually would hope that this committee has almost all of its work done by the time we send the survey out. And between January and April, we're just working on reducing, combining, refining. But of course, I can't prohibit any further ones. But one reason we started so early is to have a year and not be doing last minute stuff. So, all right, everyone, I thank you very much. I will send out a notice for the next meeting, but it will be the same prior registration link you had before, but I'll stick it all on the list. I'll get the recording up. I'm going to divide this recording in 2 to have the town hall separate from this little mini meeting. I might not have that to you, Sylvia, until next week because I'm leaving for Florida. But okay. I'll try if I decide I'm not going to sleep tonight. Okay, you guys, we are adjourned at 8:50 Mountain, and truly appreciate all of this. Now, is there some closing comments now that we're adjourned? Ms. Arrow, would you still have your hand up? I don't think you meant to.
No.
Mr. Bracco?
I would just, if it's technically possible, I know you want to head out, but could you leave the meeting open, please?
Yeah. Let me stop the recording. 1 second. They moved this button on me. Stop recording.